he'd spent over £40,000 within 3 months, solely on in-game purchases. Suddenly, we just couldn't afford the things that we normally are able to afford. We were having to take out loans with high amounts of interest on them just to be able to pay the bills.
So how would you say this made you feel as an individual when you heard somebody in your family was spending all this money on basically nothing?
Yeah, it made me really angry.
Today I'm here with my guest who is preferred to be anonymous, and we're going to be talking about in-game purchases and loot boxes, which is classed as gambling in some countries. We're going to be talking about his story and how it made him feel and how it affects his financial and his family's life. So my first question for you is, how did you find out about the problem that was going on with your family? Who was it?
So originally my mum found out. We're a pretty well-off family in regards to the area we live in, and suddenly we just couldn't afford the things that we normally are able to afford. Little extra bits, but also sometimes we were just missing the essentials. And we rely quite heavily on this family member who, has had these problems with in-game purchases and gambling. And my mum decided to do some digging. She looked into bank statements that, this person had received, and it turns out that he had spent over £40,000 within 3 months, solely on in-game purchases. Most of the time on the same game. They were spread across a few games, but they were all mobile games. Not the common ones like, FIFA, the bigger games like that. They were quite little games. Originally that's how we found out. I remember my mum telling me, and she was showing me the records and that she had added it all up and everything, and that's the total it came to in the end.
Was there any signs of what this might have been happening? Was there any signs of it all?
Not really.
Was there any previous of this happening? Like anything? Would you think he's the type of person to do it?
Not necessarily. I think it was a bit of a shock. I mean, even when people do gamble, I mean, you expect, a few £100, whatever, but for the total to be so big, I think that's what surprises all the most. There wasn't really any signs of that because a lot of the money that we get into the house, he deals with.
Yeah.
So he has his accountant and it all goes through him, so all of us were kind of blind to it in a sense.
Yeah.
There was the odd things of he's on his phone a lot, playing games a lot, but they are free to download games, but then you can buy the additional things to get you bonuses within the game. So we all just thought he was playing, free games. None of us really expected it.
How bad? So you're saying he spent over 40 grand. How was that the height of how much it was? Was there any more?
Yeah. So
how bad did it get?
So the 40 grand was over 3 months. However much has been before then or slightly after then or anything is still unknown. So it's 40 grand as a minimum, and that was in 3 months. Obviously, it affected us fairly badly to a point where we were having to take out loans with high amounts of interest on them just to be able to pay the bills. Food shops were kind of a little less often. That sort of thing. We were focusing more on being able to pay the rent and get food on the table and keep the heating and everything going rather than buying still stuff that's essential like deodorant but not as much. Holidays that were planned we're not able to pay for, so they've had to be postponed or pushed back or stuff like that. So it's been everyone sees gambling as a very short term kind of problem that you can deal with, but these loans that we'd taken out, I think a few of them took a little while to pay off. I think they're all sorted now, but it definitely impacts us all.
Yeah. Would you say the in-game purchases should be classed as? Would you say they're gambling? Would you say you're gambling that?
100%. I think with a lot of them, the in-game purchases are never really a guarantee with these sort of games. If you look at games like FIFA or Apex Legends or stuff like this, a lot of the time they're just cosmetic items. Sometimes, you know, you can buy currencies to open, you know, in-game packs, like, you know, FIFA got packs and everything else. And it's a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get most of the time. You know, there are in-game purchases where, you know, you buy something and you know what you're going to get. But a lot of the time that's not how they work. It is gambling. You put money into something with the chance of getting something back out of it.
It's not the fact that he was like doing it to get more money. He was just was he just throwing money away? Would you say?
Essentially, yeah. If it wasn't gambling, I think a lot of it would have been slightly more justified if it was standard gambling.
Yeah.
Meaning you put money in with
Try and win more back.
try and win more back, exactly. Whereas this was putting money in to get things out of games.
Yeah.
Like car games and stuff where, you know, you don't have to pay for advertisements, or, you know, you get a slightly better car part to put in a car, or like stuff like that. It's not real.
So how would you say this made you feel as an individual when you heard somebody in your family was spending all this money on basically nothing?
Yeah, it made me really angry. You know, being in the situation that I'm in now, like being at the age and everything as well, where you want to go do driving lessons and buy cars and stuff like this. You know, that money could have gone towards stuff like that for me personally. It could have gone towards, you know, clothes, anything else for you know, my other family members. On a personal note, it really frustrated me because obviously it upset my mum a lot.
Yeah.
It caused a lot of arguments. It caused a lot of problems. You know, with my mum really struggling to kind of look at him the same way and making him kind of, you know, spending some time apart, which when you have a little, you know, a little sibling, it's very difficult. They don't understand why mummy and daddy are fighting and why she can't see daddy, which is always it's always difficult to have to try and deal with that and explain it and everything. Yeah, it was really frustrating for all of us to know that he'd been so selfish.
Yeah.
And so manipulative and hidden it from all of us. You know, if they'd have come to talk to us all sooner, we could have helped.
That goes on to my next question. Do you think if this had gone unattended, do you think it got worse?
I don't think. I think if we hadn't have found out, it would probably still be going on. Yeah, I think. I think by human nature, if you do something once and kind of get away with it, there's not a lot of reason why you'd stop.
Yeah.
You know, if you can do something and get away with it, naturally humans tend to repeat their previous behaviours. So I think as long as our family hadn't have found out about obviously these problems and the money going out and being spent and everything, I think it'd still be going on. I think we'd be in a worse situation than what we were.
So why do you think he did this? What was the reason? What was the reason he gave for it?
I don't think there was a reason. I think there was.
He just wanted to.
Yeah, like I said, it was very selfish. There was a general lack of thought in that sense. He'd not thought about, you know, the impact that it was going to have on his own business, our house, our family, you know, my mum, like anything. Like there was no thought about if I do this, then it's, you know, it could cause this. There was no thought process. But I think that's the problem with these in-game purchases is they start off very little amounts and you go, oh, it's just 20 quid, it's fine. And then, you know, a week later it's another 20, and then you go, oh, I might as well get 50 next week, and it builds, you know, and that's
They are addictive. To any of them, they're addictive.
100%.
I can say they're addictive. I've done it before where you've had a tenner, you just like, oh, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Even on a game or even just gambling normally on like a football game, you lose the money, you're annoyed, but at the end of the day, you're upset. But losing 40 grand, I personally wouldn't know what to do.
No, I don't think.
And
I don't think
I'd want to hide it until, cause it's embarrassing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't think he knew the number, and I think that's what kind of shook everyone that found out.
Reality check.
Yeah, it was a bit of a reality check because I don't think he knew the number until my mum had put it all together and said, "This is how much you've spent. Look at what you've done. You know, we could have bought the house, we could have bought new cars, we could have put it towards our kids' futures. There's so many different things. 40 grand is more than what a lot of families earn in a year. That, you know, that's 40,000 coming from one person. That's more than some families' income as a house with 2 or 3 people earning. So for that, it's ridiculous. I think, like I said, there's a lack of thought. They are addictive and very, very hurtful, obviously.
Do you have any like sympathy for him, or any like? Do you think this has affected him at all? How has it affected him?
I think there's a sense of sympathy. I think like it was never his intention to go out and hurt the family.
Yeah.
And his intentions were never to cause any of this, but also these are the sort of things you need to think about before you act on. He clearly didn't think about how his actions were going to affect the rest of us, and I lose a lot of sympathy there. There is a small sliver.
They're human at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, the people, they are human.
You made a mistake, but
yeah,
it's a massive
mistake.
Serious consequences that could, well, it's affected you as a whole family.
Yeah, it takes time to kind of get back to normal, if you can ever get back to the normal. Yeah, it's very difficult, and I think it's given him a bit of a reality check. In certain regards, I think there's still more efforts that he can put in to make his lungs right again. But I think for the large majority of it, it's been pretty positive as talking to him and things.
That's his story, and that's all the questions I've got. So thank you very much for watching, and thank you to my guest for participating. I know it's a very touchy subject, so I'm thankful that he was able to speak to me openly and give his answers as honestly as possible. So I thank him, and thank you very much for watching, and that's it for me. See you later.